I'm here with Noemi Romero. And Noemi, you are the Municipal Coordinator of Attention to Foreign Residents here in Los Cabos. Nice. And there's a lot of foreign residents here. So
Yes, according to immigration offices, the last report I had on February 28, we had 17,000, almost 18,000 foreign residents, only in Los Cabos municipality.
okay. And that's just people that are like actually with residency here or?
Only with residency. We had a lot more without residency, just like the flying birds. Early birds, yeah.
Yeah, like the snowbirds, yeah. So people that don't necessarily need to get that, they're just on a tourist visa.
Exactly.
Okay, well, today I wanted to talk about residency. It's a lot of questions that people have. So just right off the bat, what types of residency are there if you're a foreigner that's coming to Mexico or coming to Cabo?
Here in Mexico, we have mainly two kinds of residency. One is temporal and one is permanent. Temporal residency is for the people who wants to spend over 180 days here. That it's the normal permit you have when you get into the country. If you have a family or if you really like the destination, you can apply for a temporary residency.
And so like a tourist visa gives you 180 days.
Yes, normally that's the maximum days. Depends on the custom, how many days they will give you to stay here.
So you have temporary, which would be for somebody who wants to stay past that. And then you have permanent, right?
Permanent residency, yes. After 4 years having the temporary residency, you can apply for the permanent residency. We suggest you that if you want to live longer in Mexico, if you buy a property, if you have family living here already, or you have a business or you are interested in work or have a business here in Mexico.
How long does it take to get temporary residence? Anybody can really kind of apply for that or?
Yes, it's well, after 6 months, they ask you a minimum from 6 to 1 year, 6 months to 1 year, and you can apply for that. It's not very difficult, but I recommend the people to start all the process back in your country. Why? Because the immigration authorities to start this process, they will ask you for some bank accounts, papers, maybe a property paper or something like that. And if you don't have all the documentation here in Mexico, you will need to go back to the States and make another appointment to continue the process. But if you start all the process in the USA, then you can get it easier there because you are in your country, you can go to your house and just complete the process there. The process started there, and they give you a sticker as the temporary residence. Then you can come to Mexico and make the exchange, and that will be faster and easier because here you will have to present all the papers here in the immigration offices.
Okay, and so when you're talking about like if you're in Texas, you would go to like the Mexican consulate in Texas. They would be able to tell you this is what you need. And then at that point, you would get it all. If you're missing documentation, you're still back home, you get it. And then they say, hey, you're good to go. Then you can come, as opposed to just coming down here and thinking that you have everything.
Yeah, that will be less expensive than if you do it here and you forget something in the USA. Or if you, for example, I have had cases that the name in their ID, the bank statement, and the birth certificate are totally different. Some of them are only with, for example, calling and C and letter missing. So you will have to go back to your country and make everything totally the same in all your official papers.
Once you get temporary, then after 4 years, you can get permanent. And that's generally the most people can do, right? Because the next step would be applying for citizenship, and that's a much different thing, right?
Exactly. Well, before we talk about that, I had some different consulates names here with me, and that's you can go to smaller consulates in U.S. cities for the others. For example, you can go to McAllen, Laredo, Salt Lake City, that have less people, less traffic to do this process than bigger cities like Los Angeles, for example. And continuing with the permanent residency, yes, to get a permanent residency, you will need to have at least 4 years living here with temporary residency before applying for the permanent residency.
I see, and that's pretty much where it stops. People that were looking for citizenship, that would be a whole different topic.
Totally different, because to have the permanent or temporary residency, you can get it here in Cabo San Lucas in immigration offices, but you will need to apply for it online, and you get an appointment there. Once that you have your appointment, you have a first appointment in the immigration offices. There, they will check all your documents you have, and if you miss something, and they will give you some formats, and with them, you will have to upload that information to their system and make another appointment online. And for that appointment, if you don't miss anything, then you can get your temporary or permanent residency.
What do you think the biggest mistake someone makes when somebody's trying to get residency coming down here? Is it?
Oh, well, one very big mistake is to try to end the entry in Mexico with your tourist visa. If you already have your temporary or permanent residency card, and you get through the customs and they stamped your passport as a tourist, you lost your card. You lose your temporary or permanent residency situation here in Mexico, and you will have to start all the process back again.
But when you're just getting off a flight, nobody's doing that on purpose, I think. Don't you think like the person in customs should be able to almost like catch that? Because I've heard this too, where people will go to like do something and then they find out that somebody stamped their passport as a tourist, but they didn't like do it on purpose, right?
But everything is in the system. Everything is in immigration system.
I know, but shouldn't that be like, so when they scan them, shouldn't it show that if it's in the system, like immediately, hey, this like Frank is a temporary resident, he's not a tourist. I've just seen it too where it hurts those people and they didn't mean to do it. And I get that they should be, hey, you need to let them know like that. But I do feel like people go through and they don't, especially if it's a different language, they're getting all nervous. Most people in the customs speak English, but
remember, it's like when we go to the States, the similar situation is you have to be like careful about what you do, what you present, and your situation within the country.
No, that's a very good point, because it is much more stringent for a Mexican visiting the United States, I believe, than a American visiting Mexico. Even if they did the same thing, it would be a lot more difficult for Americans coming here. And I think foreigners should be very appreciative of the fact that they're not just, hey, they're doing it to us, so we're going to do it to you guys.
Remember that when you get to the airport, there are two lines, one for tourists, one for Mexicans. You have to go to the Mexican line, not the tourist, because then is when you can have a passport stamped.
And that's with temporary as well.
Exactly. Permanent or temporary residence.
Okay. Yeah, that's a perk. Let's say somebody doesn't speak Spanish at all. Should you hire a professional or somebody to help you do it? Do you think that's worth, or do you think it's just set up to where most people, for example, let's say you're 65 and you're like comfortable, but like it makes you nervous in a foreign, do you think makes sense to hire somebody to help you through the immigration process, or is it pretty straightforward and you can do it alone?
Well, if you don't speak Spanish and if you have multiple incomes or multiple investments, then I recommend the person to hire a professional. If you have everything in order and you speak at least some Spanish, you can do it by yourself. Because if you know how to work online, like to get an appointment online, to upload your documents or to check the status of your process, you can do it by yourself then.
Okay. So like if you're unfamiliar, like hire somebody, or it's going to be a headache.
Yes, it will be. You will need to be back like a couple of times more than what you need.
And you've basically hit on this one. You should start the process back home. You should not try to do it here, especially because if you don't have the paperwork, then you got to fly back and get everything. Whereas you can do all that and then come down.
Then come down and just to make once that you have the sticker as a temporary or permanent residency, you just make the exchange and it's faster and easier here.
Okay, so back home, you mentioned like the smaller ones, like maybe McAllen, Texas, Salt Lake City, and then the larger ones like Los Angeles. Do you think that there's different answers or requirements at different ones?
Absolutely, yes. Each consulate has their own requirements. For example, some of them will ask you only 12 months bank statements, and some other only 6 months statements, and other 3 months statements. So yes, each one has their own requirements.
That's good to know. If there's no consistency, that makes even more sense when you're back home. Go in, have the conversation, ask what you need, and then come back. And then I think, there's another place that's close by. You can always go there and check what's at that one. But that makes sense because I figured there's different consistencies. And instead of an American saying, oh, well, why don't they have it all normal? It's like, hey, just here's the system and be grateful that it's not as stringent as Mexican going to the United States anyway. Just part of the procedure here, and go in there, get what they're asking for, and just proceed from there.
Right. Yes, you are totally correct.
If you could change one thing that would make the system easier, because I'm sure there's a lot, just like if it was in the US, what do you think is like most difficult about this?
I think it could be digitalized system, because if you lose your ID, then the immigration here must contact that consulate where you get it, and it's not just the same in all the consulates, the same system. Then they need to work more on that process, so it will be easier for the immigration here to get all your information from your consulate in the USA.
So instead of it being like, if you lose your card here, then you couldn't just go and be like, hey, I lost my card, here it is. It's like you got to go back home.
Yeah, to ask for a document.
If it was digital, it would be a lot easier.
Exactly.
Interesting. Well, maybe that's something hopefully in the future that can be.
I think very soon, because everything is getting like digitalized.
It makes it a lot easier for everybody involved. Do you need a certain income to be eligible for residency?
Yes, absolutely, yes. They asked you, and I wrote those amounts. For temporary, generally it requires an income around $4,400. Of savings, investments around $74,000 US.
Okay, and that's the 4,400 is per month?
Per month.
Okay, and then the savings is just anything in an account?
On account or investment that you already have here in Mexico too. And for permanent, generally requires a monthly income of around $7,400 US. It could be from your work or from your social security income, or savings around, or investments about $300,000. Yes, it's a requirement. Besides, if you want to be a permanent resident, you have to be with your card from 4 previous years as a temporary resident.
You actually have to have those?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Okay. And do you think that, just like we said, from McAllen, Texas to Salt Lake City to Los Angeles, do those numbers possibly change between?
Yes.
Okay. So once again, there's just not that much consistency. So people should just know to, wherever you're going, just make sure that you get the information, and that's what you bring to them.
Very important to mention, because remember that it depends on the UMAS in Mexico, so it can vary during the same year, or from one year to another year. So it's important you to go to your consulate or immigration here to ask how much is the minimum required to get your permanent or temporary residency.
Okay, and those have have gone up too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
And I guess just next, if somebody had permanent residency and they were looking at citizenship, it's not something that is easy, right?
Well, it is not difficult because if you already have a minimum of 5 years living in Mexico as a permanent resident, then you can apply for a naturalized situation, like to get your Mexican
Yeah.
permanent. Yeah, to be a Mexican. Or if you are married with a Mexican person, that will be easier too. If you are over 60 years old, then you won't need the written exam, just the conversation, because if you want to apply and you are younger than 60 years old, you will need to have a history exam and written exam and politics and culture exam.
If you had to say the biggest mistake somebody makes when trying to get residency is like coming down here and then trying to get an appointment and then realizing they don't have documents and then they got to go back home, or would you say it's something else?
But if you have everything in order, then it won't be difficult for you to get here all the process.
And yeah, and just to close it out, so you're the Municipal Coordinator of Attention to Foreign Residents. With a lot of the stuff that's going on, especially between the US and Mexico, I think we have really good relationships. You continue to see Americans, Canadians, and other people from Latin America wanting to move here and that they're welcomed openly.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, I have had more people that are just arriving from United States or Canada, especially because they are closer to Mexico and Los Cabos. And yes, we have erased that number of foreign residents trying to get their permanent or temporary residence here in Mexico with no problem. It's not less the number of citizens from there to come into Los Cabos. I think it's growing up.
Yeah, so it keeps on growing, and hopefully that continues where it's just a good relationship between the US and Mexico, and it's good to hear that. Noemi, thank you for your time. Is there anything you want to close with? And if somebody wanted to get in touch with you about anything, is there a way?
Yes, I'm in Catac from Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Well, 2 to 30 because the building is closed at 3. Now you can contact me by WhatsApp to +52 624 171 2843. And I will reply to your WhatsApp. Maybe if you send me a WhatsApp after 3 p.m., maybe the next day, but I will reply to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Noemi, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks to you for the invitation to this interview.